PodcastCoug Season 1, Episode 4.
You're listening to the PodcastCoug Radio Network with your host, James Laurie. The PodcastCoug is your weekly Coug On Demand show featuring all things Cougs and Washington State Cougar football. And now, here is your host, PodcastCoug.
Hello, everyone. I'm James Laurie, the PodcastCoug, and you're listening to the PodcastCoug Radio Network. Again, I'm the PodcastCoug. We're heading into the Apple Cup, and wow, we got a little bit to talk about. Colorado, the loss against the Buffaloes. We're going to briefly talk about that, the Colorado game. Then we're heading into the AC on Friday. Happy Thanksgiving, everyone. Glad you're with us on the PodcastCoug Radio Network. Remember, this is kind of your weekly update, kind of a podcast to get you through from that last game to the next game. Here we are at AC, and happy Thanksgiving, and so glad you joined us. You can find us all over, every sort of device, mobile or your laptop, iOS, Stitcher, which is actually a lot of people. What is Stitcher? Stitcher is a dedicated podcast app, so you can find us on Stitcher, SoundCloud, iTunes, you name it. All right, Colorado, here we go. This was the first matchup in a decade at Folsom Field with back-to-back, with back and forth lead changes all the way through, and it was the biggest matchup in a decade. With two ranked teams. And, it really, at the end of the day, Colorado, 38-24, our win streak, our 8-win streak ended, and it was our first loss in 71 days, all the way back to September 10th at the Blue Turf at Boise State. All right, so Colorado improves to 9-2, 7-1. The Cougs gave up 603 yards. That's the most yards they've allowed since Eastern Washington on our opening, right? And Colorado, we allowed Colorado 100 run plays and never managed Cepho Lufau, their quarterback, who actually ran for 3 touchdowns. Wow, the guy was just very difficult to stop on the ground game. What a dual threat quarterback. Cepho Lufau was injured last year, didn't play in Pullman, and of course we beat him in Pullman last year. A whole different game. Colorado deserves to be in the top 10. I wouldn't say they're they're winnable. We certainly could beat them, but we really have to be ready. I mean, we just with River not in the game, it just didn't seem right. I made this reference, by the way. I'm a MI Coug on Wazoo Watch Forum, and I made that a comment on there. You take the Beatles, all right? If you take John Lennon out of the Beatles, and it's just not the Beatles. You could say that for Paul McCartney, but I mean Lennon really had the. If you take River Craycraft out of our team, and injuries are common, right? But River was a glue. We have to adapt and change, but River really brought a lot of leadership and that extra Gabe Marks. I mean, he was our second best receiver, and things just weren't clicking very well. And so Lufau finished for 345 passing yards, 108 rushing yards, and of course their tailback Philip Lindsay had a great day. He was unstoppable. 31 carries, 144 yards, 2 touchdowns. Colorado wanted it more than we did. And, I'll tell you, don't read the press. There was that, you guys see the drive on the Pac-12 network? I mean, I know the drive, they do it for every school and every year. What a great segment on the Pac-12 network. And here they're interviewing. Now, they did this during the Arizona game, but I mean, if these players watch this, I mean, literally you're walking on water. And here you are. At that time was the biggest game of our season, and you got to be focused. No distractions, and that's what Leach is doing, by the way, on the AC on Friday. No press, nobody, no distractions. Leach is the only one talking to the press. We'll talk about that in a minute. But clearly, the Cougs weren't able to finish drives. We left a lot on the field and didn't play our full potential. Luke was in a rhythm, on the first half, but on the second half, he was not in a rhythm at all. And the Cougs were not consistent, either on offense or defense. And we've got, that was our biggest game of the year. Now, who do we have on Friday? We've got to really, really step up. And so anyway, defense got shredded for 600 yards, couldn't stop the run, all right? And offense was 4 for 15 on third down conversions, 2 for 4 on fourth down. That's bad. Okay, and Falk was averaging 6 yards per attempt. I mean, it's just, it's a tough loss. Normally Luke completes about 70%, over 70% of his passes. Last Saturday it was 50%. Too many overthrown balls, too many open receivers that, just wide open, and too many critical drops, including an easy touchdown in the second half. And then our defense just ran out of gas. At Boulder's altitude, I'll tell you, you could tell we just ran out of gas, and there was too much ball control with Lufau, and who easily won it for Colorado. I mean, we just couldn't stop him. So anyway, that's kind of the situation. Now, the good news is the COUGS, there's no bearing on the Pac-12 North title hopes. As you know, the Cougs and the Huskies go into Friday's AC with one Pac-12 loss each. The winner earns the right to play in the Pac-12 championship in Santa Clara. How about that? That's, we control it all right now. Friday, we control it. The Pac-12 championship game we control in Santa Clara, and it all is on Friday. We've got to literally step up. And before we get to the second half of the program, we're going to talk about the AC. One more note on Colorado. Mike McIntyre, there is talk, head coach of the Buffaloes. He's been there since 2013. By the way, this team, they're most of them are all seniors, right, who beat us. They signed up for, we're going to stay. Cepho said, I'm going to stick around my senior year. And all those guys just, they bought into it. They just stayed with it. They had so many setbacks the last several years. I mean, they literally were the bottom of the Pac-12. And here they are, extremely senior-oriented, extremely experienced. They didn't give up. They stayed together. They stayed with Cepho. And here they are, at the leader at the Pac-12 South. Okay, so they've got their Utah game coming up, and that's going to be interesting. What would you rather see? We're going to take one game at a time, but if would you rather play USC or Colorado again? Frankly, I would rather play Colorado. Right now, Mike McIntyre, head coach, he's been there since 2013. Came from San Jose State. There's talk that he might bolt. If you look at his track record, he's got a lot of NFL experience as defensive back and wide receiver coaches. I don't see him staying. I could be wrong. He could stay at Colorado for, he could stay at Colorado for several years. He might get Coach of the Year. Okay, and there will be some teams maybe calling for him. He's only making $2.2 a year. There's talk that he may not last at Colorado. So anyway, we're going to talk about Friday's game of the AC coming up right after the break.
Hey, Coug fans. You're podcasting with James Laurie and the PodcastCoug Radio Network. The PodcastCoug is your weekly Coug on Demand show, featuring all things Cougar football in Washington State. To help you get through the week, hit the subscribe button or check us out on iTunes, the App Store, iOS, Google Play, Stitcher, or at PodcastCoug.com.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the second half of the Podcast Coug Radio Network. I am the Podcast Coug, James Laurie. Hey, we're in AC. It's Friday, and happy Thanksgiving. All right, here we are at the AC on Friday. Huge, obviously, the biggest game of the year. Now, last week was the biggest game of the year. Now, here we are. The Huskies opening up as a 6-point favorite over the Cougs on the 109th Apple Cup. 10th year in a row, that is the 10th year in a row the Cougs have been, the Huskies have been favored over the Cougs. It's shaping up to be the biggest in the 109 history of this rivalry, all right? This is the rivalry, not Oregon, all right? Not Oregon, not the Ducks. And this is a good rivalry, too. There's not a lot of hatred between the two schools. There really isn't. There's a lot of bantering, little, office bantering in the office or the water cool. We dominate license plates. The Cougs dominate license plates. Huskies have dominated this rivalry. I mean, the Apple Cup, they easily have the advantage over the win-loss over the Cougs. But many times they are close. Very few have been ever been a blowout. In fact, I don't think there's ever been blowouts. Last year, 45-10. Luke wasn't around last year. He had to sit out for the AC because of that concussion, the rule that he had to sit out. So this is Luke's first. Well, he played 2 years ago a little bit in the Apple Cup, but frankly, this is Luke's he's very healthy. Coming in to Friday, school's out. Let's hope the students show up. Kickoff 12:30, National Fox. Huskies have won 3 in a row. Huskies are 10-1, 7-1 in conference, coming off of their 44-18 victory blowout over Arizona State. Washington State, of course, we talked about their loss to Colorado, snapping the 8-game winning streak. Cougs have to focus. They've got a defensive mission on the Apple Cup. We need to slow down the Huskies' ground game, okay? We gave up 603 yards last week to the Buffaloes. We talked about that. Now, we're going to have to slow down the Huskies by limiting their ground attack. All right, Washington ranks 29th in the country in passing and 38th nationally in rushing. And they're likely to be the best offensive we've seen this year. Period. All right? You take Cal Berkeley, this is nothing. I mean, the Huskies are going to be the best offensive challenge we've had this week. And so we got to shake off the lingering issues that the disappointing loss last week. We've got to stay focused. We gave up 603 yards to Colorado, 5 rushing touchdowns against the Buffaloes, which is a letdown. Because, up until the Colorado game, we have stopped everybody on the run, just about. And we couldn't stop Colorado. And so here we are Friday. There will be no drastic defense fixes. Grinch has a lot going on his plate. But we've got to focus and stay on course and slow down the Huskies' ground game, eliminating them to explosive plays. Now, they are averaging 208 yards per game of rushing yards, and they have scored 19 rushing touchdowns this season. Myles Gaskin, sophomore, running back, leads the way. He's got 9 touchdowns this season. He's averaging 102 yards per game. He's got 2 back-to-back 1,000 rushing seasons. This year he's got 1,130 yards, okay? 1,130. And he's also rushed for 138 yards and 2 touchdowns he had with Washington State in last year's Apple Cup. So we've got to eliminate the big plays, obviously. And you look at the Huskies, and they've got a lot of explosive plays and a lot of guys that could run the ball. They could break tackles. They're very dynamic. They are great at, they're corners. They have the best secondary in the Pac-12. The Huskies have the 2 best corners and the best secondary, and probably one of the best secondaries in the whole United States, in the whole country. Okay, so that's where we've got to execute. And it's going to be a huge emphasis on the Cougs and Grinch to stop the Washington Huskies. Now, we could say, well, you throw out all the records. This is the Apple Cup. This is the rivalry. Yeah, there's been many years that the Huskies have been favored, and we've had a 2 or 3 game winning season and go into the Apple and we beat them. Okay, but this year I don't get that feeling this year. The Huskies are extremely explosive. Browning is an incredible quarterback, and they're just loaded up. I mean, they got a lot of talent, and they are solid. No media whatsoever, no press conferences. The only body that's addressing the press is Leach and Peterson. And, Peterson did this last year. He shut down all the media access to the Apple Cup, and Leach is doing the same thing. And the rationale is there's a lot of distractions, lots of distractions. And I remember, if you listen to the radio, this is the week where they don't talk about NFL very much. Hit on Monday, it's not 100% Seahawks on Monday. It is Washington State and Washington, at least in King County, both of our sports radio stations, and probably wherever you are. It's all about the Apple Cup as far as the Northwest. So there's a lot of distractions this week. If you're reading the press, I'll tell you. So here we are, short week. Usually, the old days, the Apple Cup was before Thanksgiving, and you'd get to sit around the Thanksgiving table and discuss the game. So no press conferences except for the coaches, Leach and Peterson. And speaking about Leach, he talked about Luke returning for his senior year next year. Luke, he says Luke will return as quarterback next year as a senior year. Now, 2 weeks ago, Luke shot down a media report that quoted unknown sources that he's decided to leave the NFL draft early. And Leach expressed his belief that Luke will not. He thinks that he'll return for the 2017 season. He says most guys go out early are not successful. They don't make the team, and he thinks that Luke's coming back next year. Speaking about quarterbacks, did you see that about Blake Barnett? Blake Barnett was the starting quarterback at Alabama for Nick Saban. Started the year with against USC. Alabama played 4 games with Alabama as their leading their starting quarterback, and Saban benched him after week 4. And Blake Barnett, who's from California, he's a 5-star recruit, 5-star, could go anywhere. He was benched, and he found a loophole in the system, which basically when you transfer, you have to sit out the following year. Well, he found a loophole where Blake could theoretically play next season. And guess what? He is coming to Washington State on an official visit Friday for the Apple Cup. Blake Barnett will be with us in the crowd, in the stands, making an official visit. I think that's really cool. I think we got to win a ball game on Friday. But now, what does that say to Luke and Helinski? Gosh, that brings more competition. What about Tyler Helinski? If you bring in Blake Barnett, but this is an official visit. There's no, there's nothing committed. I think he visited Oregon, the Ducks, and they lost when Blake was there. So interesting. This would be Leach's first big-time recruit for quarterback, okay? All right, so there you go on there. Cougs have the best offensive line in 10 years. We need to capitalize on special teams and in the red zone. Can't make any mistakes in the red zone whatsoever. Nothing. Jamal Morrow, Gerard Wicks, and James Williams. Let's call it Morrow, Wicks, and Williams. They are dangerous. Let's keep that ball on the ground and let's run it down the throat of the Huskies. We have a chance to win this ball game. Once again, it's going to be a grudge match. I think the Huskies are a better team. They're, unanimously, everybody on paper, on computer, the Huskies are the better team. They've got the best corners and the best secondaries, as stated. And it's going to be a grudge match, and I, you know, it could be a blowout. I mean, it really could be. I mean, I've seen that happen. You know, we've seen this happen, but generally, Apple Cups are pretty close. This is going to make the Friday's game is, by the way, is going to be the first time since 2001 since we've got 2 ranked teams in the top 25 that are nationally ranked. All right, 23 Washington State, number 5. Washington, first time since 2001. The stakes are even higher this year because, even though it's the 109th meeting, first time since 1981, the winner of the Apple Cup earns a shot at the Rose Bowl, albeit through, of course, through the Pac-12 championship game at Levi Stadium. That's the path, the direct path into the granddaddy of them all. So the Huskies are battling to earn a spot at the 4-team playoff championship. And the Cougs, coming off loss to Colorado, I'll tell you, if we needed to, you know, take care of business and we you know, win. So we haven't won the Apple Cup since 2012. All right, so it's been about 3-4 years. 2012. Is this the biggest Apple Cup ever? You know what? The answer is yes. It is. It is truly the biggest Apple Cup ever. Hey, Gabe Marks, John Ross. Let's talk about these two guys. John Ross, these are big play guys. You know, of course, Marks. Now, Ross is their big receiver at the Huskies. Both of the wide receivers, they played against each other when they were young in their high school days, and they're going to be playing on Friday. Ross has huge respect for Gabe Marks. They were teammates on a 7-7 football team in the LA area, Los Angeles. And, you know, Ross came out of Long Beach High School and Jordan High School out of Long Beach, and Marks is out of Venice High. And they both know each other. They played with each other, and Ross has got a lot of respect. And Gabe helped Ross in the early days. I mean, Ross was quoted saying he'll never forget it. He started out on a team 0-4, and Gabe came by and gave some tips, and then they won the rest of their season. So, you know, Ross was saying that he knew way back that Gabe was so talented. He had a special touch, a gift, and he's great on defense, even great on as a safety. But he knew that he had some big time plays and gifts. So that's very interesting. Both are going to be on the field on Friday. It is the biggest Apple Cup of all time. Big time receivers, big time quarterbacks, you know, some great running backs. Wow, this is huge. So here we are. Here we are. It's just going to be a big game. I think you look out the traffic in the roads, and it's going to be quiet on Friday afternoon for the most part. The weather should be showers and rain in Pullman on Saturday. All right, that's, you know, I'll tell you that is a challenge. If you're a passing team, maybe we just keep it on the ground a lot. Hopefully, it's just going to be a light shower. It won't be a solid rain. Coming over to the passes, there might be some concern. Don't worry about it. DOT does a great job at plowing the roads. You're going to be fine. There is snow, though. There is snow over the pass a little bit, but they do a great job. And if you got two-wheel or all-wheel drive, you're going to be fine. Generally, just go easy. It should be, obviously, such an exciting game. Biggest Apple Cup in 109 years. Have a great, great Thanksgiving and a great Friday. We'll talk to you next week. Go Cougs, and God bless.
You've been listening to the PodcastCoug Radio Network with your host, James Laurie. The PodcastCoug is your weekly Coug On Demand show featuring all things Cougs and Washington State Cougar football. This has been a presentation of the PodcastCoug Radio Network. Find us at PodcastCoug.com.
Williams.